I saw a video yesterday of a woman who had this epiphany, had a realization that the whole feminist ideology that she bought into really screwed her over as she was getting into her 30s, and she realized that she wasn't getting what she expected in her life because she was told a lot of you know malarkey, BS, whatever you want to call it, a lot of baloney, a lot of things that were not true that she was living by. In other words, she adopted a philosophy that she could not live by. Okay, and she didn't know that until she saw the consequences firsthand as she was getting older. And she started to realize, she started to look around her, and she started to realize that these people were doing better than she was because of her ideology that she bought into. And in the comment section, people were saying, that were had this sort of self-righteous attitude. They were saying, well, she deserves this. She's a feminist, and she's getting what she deserves, which is actually true. Yes, she is. Just because somebody is misled, that doesn't excuse them from the consequences of their actions. Okay, people basically in the long run do get what they deserve. Okay, another example, as a bit of a tangent, there are people that have bought into the whole far left ideology and believe that immigrants, illegal immigration is a great thing, and are impeding ICE officers, and now they're finding themselves facing prison time. And some people are like, oh, that's harsh. There's reasons behind all this. There's a reason why people would face prison time for impeding an ICE officer from doing what they need to be doing. But their ideologies are not an excuse for leniency, okay? People must be held accountable for their actions regardless of the reason why, okay? As somebody once said, that ignorance is not an excuse to break the law. So on the one hand, yes, it's important to suffer the consequences. However, there is something that I want to give as an insight to people. There was somebody, I'm guessing probably the baby boomer generation, in one of the comments saying, I'm sick and tired of these millennials and Zoomers, having some kind of significant discovery of what they would deem as common sense. And to that, I would say that you have to remember, first of all, most people, basically everybody, with the exception of the quote academia and people like myself, are not philosophers. They're not the type of people that have an interest of delving into the intellectual background, or both the intellectual and therefore the practical background of a set of ideas. Most people are focused on their lives. It's like trying to argue against somebody who believes in the flat earth theory. And, no matter what piece of evidence, they'll say that's part of the conspiracy. There is a way, without using reference material, there's a way that you can prove that the earth is a globe, that it's a sphere, by using actual hand tools on the ground without using devices or anything else. You'd have to know a bit of trigonometry. See, it's actually not as simple as you might take it for granted. These are people that have been indoctrinated at an early age. They're not professional intellectuals. They're not the intellectual types. These are people that want to live their lives and are attempting to apply the ideology that they were fed to. And of course, it's not working, okay? So yes, they deserve the consequences of their actions. If nothing else, it's a lesson to other people to say, hey, this is why this doesn't work, okay? Or at least one of the reasons why it doesn't work. Yes, you'll get in trouble. Yes, you're going to end up in a bad situation as you get older. However, it's important that people like myself, and I'm sure a lot of you that know better, you have to communicate this to other people, okay? There's no reason why a lot of these people have to be put in these bad situations because of their buying into the level of stupidity that they're being fed. Okay, you got to remember, these people, yes, they're absolutely part of the problem, but they're also a symptom of a problem too. They're a symptom of the intellectual rot that this country is being subject to and has been for decades, actually over 100 years, because this stuff came from Europe and it transplanted into the United States right after the turn of the century. So when you see this, just remember that it's not so easy. These are people that's their worldview, and as a I guess you could say my own personal interest. You could say I wouldn't call it a duty because nobody has a duty to do this, but as an act of my self interest to communicate this to other people so that they are not the type of a problem that the far left is now, to de-escalate this, to say, hey, put the information out there. What you're doing doesn't make any sense and you can't live by this. It's wrong. And it's actually what you're doing is by extension, some of what you're doing is you're violating the rights of other people. And you're really just going to hurt yourself if you continue down this path. That is something that I do, and I've had moderate success talking to people. And maybe, yes, you have the right to criticize them, but maybe also try talking to these people. Say, hey, there's a better way to doing what you're doing. Why don't you try using your brain? Try thinking rationally. Read some constructive books. So, yes, it's a problem, but it can be solved.